The Day the Earth Stood Still is the film that invented the alien visitor genre, a Cold War parable where one alien's judgment will decide whether humanity lives or dies. But the version you saw almost ended very differently. Did you know the censors rewrote the ending because they said only God has power over death? Or that the screenwriter secretly turned the alien into a Christ figure and never told the director? Today we're uncovering 14 hidden truths about The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951, including shocking Easter eggs that reveal a secret connection to the Star Wars and Evil Dead franchises. Number 1. The ending that censors killed. Near the end of the film, after Klaatu is shot dead by soldiers and brought back to life by Gort, Helen Benson asks him a direct question. Does Gort truly have unlimited power over life and death? Klaatu pauses, then tells her that Gort revived him, but only temporarily. The real power over life and death belongs to a higher divine spirit. It sounds profound, almost spiritual, and for decades, audiences accepted it as the intended ending, but it wasn't. Edmund North, the screenwriter who adapted the original short story into this screenplay, had written something very different. In his original script, when Helen asks that same question, Klaatu simply confirms it. No qualifications, no divine authority above them. The robots had conquered death itself through pure technology, with no higher power anywhere in the picture. That version never made it to screen. Joseph Breen, the chief film censor at the Motion Picture Association, read the script and flatly refused to approve it. His position was non-negotiable. No film character could claim power over life and death, because only God can do that. In the end, they added a single forced sentence, and that one line completely changed what the film was saying. Number 2. The line that became 3 bounty hunters. The most famous line in this movie is Klaatu Barada Nikto, and it became one of the most famous phrases in science fiction history. 3 alien words that Helen had to say to stop Gort from destroying the Earth. Decades later, George Lucas, who was a massive fan of this film, found a way to pay tribute that most audiences completely missed. In Return of the Jedi, 3 of Jabba the Hutt's henchmen at his palace are named Klaatu, Barada, and Nikto. Lucas split the phrase into 3 separate characters, but the reference goes deeper than just the names. In the Star Wars universe, the character Klaatu belongs to a species called the Nikto, and the character Barada belongs to a species called the Klaatuanian, from a planet called Klaatuine. Lucas didn't just borrow the words, he wove them into the DNA of the Star Wars universe itself, hiding a 1951 alien peace mission inside the criminal underworld of a galaxy far, far away. Number 3. The private joke. Nobody was supposed to notice. Screenwriter Edmund North had a secret. He had deliberately threaded Christian symbolism through the entire screenplay without telling a single person on the production. Not the producer, not the director. He called it my private little joke. The clues are everywhere once you know to look. The alien takes the human name Mr. Carpenter, which was the profession of Jesus Christ. He's misunderstood by the authorities, betrayed by someone close to him, killed by the state, resurrected, and then ascends into the heavens. Director Robert Wise didn't notice any of this until it was pointed out to him years after the film's release. And here's where it gets ironic. Remember the censor from our first fact, the one who forced them to add the line about the Almighty Spirit? That confrontation drew public attention to the resurrection scene, which made critics look more closely at the entire script, which exposed the very allegory North had been trying to keep hidden. His private little joke stopped being private because someone tried to suppress it. Number 4. The film that changed Cold War diplomacy. On November 19, 1985, Ronald Reagan sat down with Mikhail Gorbachev in Geneva for the first face-to-face meeting between an American president and a Soviet leader in years. The Cold War was at its most dangerous, with nuclear arsenals capable of destroying the planet several times over. And in the middle of this historic summit, Reagan asked Gorbachev a question that stunned his own advisors. What would you do if the United States were suddenly attacked by someone from outer space? Would you help us? Gorbachev agreed that he would. Colin Powell, who later served as Reagan's national security advisor, believed this unusual proposal was directly inspired by The Day the Earth Stood Still, the idea that an external threat would make human conflicts look trivial. 2 years later, he told the United Nations, "I occasionally think how quickly our differences would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world." A low-budget science fiction film from 1951 had quietly found its way into the most important diplomatic conversation of the 20th century. Number 5. The actor blacklisted for playing a genius. Sam Jaffe, the character actor cast as Professor Barnhart, the film's Einstein figure, was an unusual pick for Hollywood. He held an engineering degree from Columbia University and had actually served as Dean of Mathematics at the Bronx Cultural Institute before turning to acting. He was perfect for the role, but after Jaffe had already started filming, his name appeared in Red Channels, the infamous pamphlet listing performers with alleged communist connections. The studio immediately wanted to remove him from the picture. Producer Julian Blaustein fought the decision, appealing directly to studio chief Darryl Zanuck, who allowed Jaffe to finish the film, but it was a temporary reprieve. After The Day the Earth Stood Still was released, Jaffe was formally blacklisted for refusing to cooperate with the House Un-American Activities Committee. He wouldn't appear in another Hollywood film for nearly a decade. The irony cuts deep. A man playing a character modeled on Albert Einstein, who was himself under FBI surveillance for his political views, was destroyed by the exact same paranoia the film warned against. Number 6. The Twist, the film threw away. The movie was based on a 1940 short story called Farewell to the Master by Harry Bates, published in Astounding Science Fiction magazine. But the film completely changed the story's most important element, its ending. In Bates's original tale, the alien Klaatu arrives on Earth with his robot companion called Gnut and is killed almost immediately by a sniper. The rest of the story follows a human journalist who watches as Gnut repeatedly tries to bring Klaatu back to life by reconstructing his body from scratch. Then comes the final line. When the journalist tells Gnut he'll relay a message to the authorities on Klaatu's behalf, the robot responds, "You misunderstand, I am the master." The entire premise flips in that one sentence. The biological alien was never the ambassador. The robot was in charge all along. Screenwriter Edmund North discarded this twist entirely, making Klaatu the diplomat and Gort the enforcer. And for his contribution to what became a landmark of the genre, Bates received a total payment of $500. Number 7. The magic words. Ash couldn't remember. The phrase Klaatu Barada Nikto didn't just live on in Star Wars. It also became one of the funniest scenes in horror comedy history. In Sam Raimi's 1992 film Army of Darkness, the third installment of the Evil Dead franchise, the hero Ash Williams, played by Bruce Campbell, is stranded in medieval times and told he must correctly recite 3 specific words to safely take the Necronomicon, a powerful book of the dead. Those 3 words are Klaatu Barada Nikto. When the moment arrives, Ash gets the first 2 words right, but fumbles the third, coughing and mumbling his way through Nikto. His failure unleashes an entire army of the undead. Raimi turned what was a deadly serious failsafe in the 1951 film into an extended gag about a buffoon who can't remember 3 words. The joke landed so well that many younger viewers today actually associate Klaatu Barada Nikto with Army of Darkness rather than the film that created it. Number 8. The Pentagon said no. When the production requested military cooperation, which was standard practice for Hollywood films at the time, the United States Department of Defense read the screenplay and flatly refused. The script portrayed the military as trigger-happy aggressors who shoot an unarmed visitor the moment he steps off his ship. The Pentagon had no interest in endorsing that image. Director Robert Wise confirmed the refusal in his DVD commentary, but the filmmakers found a workaround. The 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment, stationed at Fort Meade in Maryland, agreed to supply tanks, equipment, and real soldiers for the Army scenes. If you look closely at the film, one of the tanks actually bears the regiment's own Brave Rifles insignia. Real soldiers ended up playing fictional soldiers in a film their own Pentagon had rejected. Their actual unit badge visible on screen for anyone paying attention. Number 9. The 7-foot usher who couldn't lift a thing. The robot Gort is one of the most intimidating figures in science fiction history, but the man inside the suit was anything but intimidating. Lock Martin was not an actor. He was an usher at Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. Hired for one reason: he stood 7 feet 7 inches tall. The problem was that Martin's height came from a medical condition that also left him physically frail. He couldn't actually carry anything heavy, and the script required Gort to carry both Patricia Neal and Michael Rennie, so the crew improvised. For front-facing shots of Gort carrying Neal, a wire from an overhead crane was secretly attached to her body while Martin just held his arms in position. For rear shots, lightweight dummies replaced both actors entirely. The foam neoprene suit was so hot that Martin could only endure it for about 30 minutes at a stretch. And during Klaatu's climactic final speech, when Martin had to stand motionless in the background for too long, his arms began visibly spasming from exhaustion. If you watch that scene closely today, you can see the supposedly indestructible robot quietly falling apart. Number 10. 3 words with no translation. Despite becoming one of the most quoted lines in all of science fiction, Klaatu Barada Nikto was never given an official meaning. When director Robert Wise asked screenwriter Edmund North what the words translated to, North told him it was just something I kind of cooked up. I thought it sounded good. But over the decades, nearly everyone involved with the film offered a different answer. Billy Gray, who played Bobby Benson, believed the phrase meant "Save Earth." Florence Blaustein, the producer's widow, revealed that North drove past a street called Barada every day on his way to the studio, and she suspected that was where at least one of the words came from. Film historian Stephen J. Rubin recalled asking North the question directly, and North told him the translation was, "There's hope for Earth, if the scientists can be reached." Perhaps that's the most fitting legacy of all 3 words that saved the world, meant something different to every single person who ever spoke them. Number 11. 3 Hollywood legends said no. Before Michael Rennie was cast as Klaatu, the role passed through 3 of the biggest names in Hollywood. Spencer Tracy read the script and actively wanted the part, but producer Julian Blaustein rejected him, worried that audiences would see a movie star climbing out of a flying saucer instead of an alien. Director Robert Wise then pushed for Claude Rains, but Rains was locked into a Broadway play and couldn't free himself. Montgomery Clift was approached next and turned it down flat. It was studio chief Darryl Zanuck who finally suggested Rennie, a British actor he had recently seen performing in London. Rennie was virtually unknown to American audiences, which turned out to be exactly the point. His unfamiliarity made him completely believable as what Blaustein called a stranger in a strange land. The actor nobody had heard of gave the performance that helped define a genre. Number 12. The architect who designed the spaceship. The production didn't want the spacecraft to look like every other rocket in 1950s science fiction, so set designers Thomas Little and Claude Carpenter brought in an unexpected collaborator, Frank Lloyd Wright, arguably the most famous architect in the world. Wright approached the project with a philosophy that went far beyond a movie prop. He wanted the ship's exterior to resemble what he called an experimental substance that acts like living tissue, a surface where if cut, the rift would appear to heal like a wound, leaving a continuous surface with no scar. The futuristic interior was reportedly inspired by Wright's Johnson Wax headquarters, completed in 1936. To achieve the seamless look on screen, the crew filled the crack around the ship's door with putty, then painted over it. When the door needed to open, the putty was simply pulled apart, and to make the door close seamlessly again, they just played the opening footage in reverse. That combination of visionary architecture and old-fashioned camera tricks created a spacecraft so convincing it influenced the look of flying saucers in science fiction for decades afterward. Number 13. The score Fox recycled 14 years later. Bernard Herrmann, the legendary composer behind Psycho, Vertigo, and Citizen Kane, created the film's score using an orchestra unlike anything audiences had ever heard. He stripped out conventional strings and woodwinds entirely, replacing them with electric violin, electric cello, electric bass, 2 theremins, 2 Hammond organs, 4 tubas, and heavy percussion. He also used experimental overdubbing and tape reversal techniques that wouldn't become standard in electronic music for years. His work actually predated the electronic compositions of Karl-Heinz Stockhausen by a full year, and Edgard Varese by 3. Danny Elfman, who would later score Batman and The Simpsons, credited this specific score as the work that made him want to compose for film. But the strangest twist in the score's afterlife came 14 years later, when 20th Century Fox quietly recycled Herrmann's main title theme for the pilot of their 1965 television series Lost in Space. The same eerie theremin music that accompanied Klaatu's landing on the National Mall was reused, without fanfare, to introduce the Robinson family's journey into the stars. Number 14. The actress who thought she was making garbage. Patricia Neal, who plays Helen Benson, did not want to be in this movie. Warner Brothers had just dropped her after a string of box office disappointments, and she signed with 20th Century Fox for a 3-picture deal, hoping for a fresh start. The first project Fox offered was The Day the Earth Stood Still. Neal was devastated. She assumed it would be another disposable flying saucer picture, and she accepted only because refusing would have put her on suspension at a studio she'd just joined. On set, her skepticism was hard to hide. She kept biting her lips to stop from laughing during takes, especially in scenes about robots and aliens. Offset, when the press hounded Neal about her affair with the older married Gary Cooper, Rennie advised her to respond to every question with great dignity. Klaatu Barada Nikto. The film Patricia Neal thought was garbage became, in her own later words, the best science fiction film ever made. The Day the Earth Stood Still asks a question that hasn't gotten any easier in 75 years. If an outsider arrived tomorrow and judged us by how we treat the things we don't understand, what would the verdict be? If this video made you see the film differently, tell us which fact surprised you most in the comments. And if you haven't already, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next time we dig into the films you thought you already knew.